Good morning. Now we enter to yet another story in American literature written by famous writer Edgar Allan Poe. During my introductory class, I mentioned about Edgar Allan Poe. You know, probably without Allan Poe, American literature is nothing. He has contributed a lot to American literature. Probably American literature has been uplifted by this eminent writer, Edgar Allan Poe. We people like him because he has brought so many phantasmagoric and fantastic stories. Probably they transport all the readers to the field of fantasy and fear. That is what we call Edgar Allan Poe. Even in his biography, he says a lot of fearful incidents that has been haunting his main brain from the beginning of a writer. And you know, he is almost romantic in nature. His friends or contemporaries, Hawthorne, Emerson, Longfellow, those people loved him very much. And they had a particular, what is called a friendship, a type of coterie that they have made American literature in a different horizon. Coterie in the sense that without their brain, American literature was not at all being developed. Not only a poet, but he had written a lot of creations, what is called Tamerlane and other poems in 1827 published, which really brought his talent and genius. And even so many short stories, and one among the short stories, this Fall of the House of Usher. Fall of the House of Usher, a type of a story which we would already consider and compare the stories of Khushwant Singh in India. Alright, Khushwant Singh also has written such stories. He tells folk in the house of Usher. It is the synopsis, is what is called the particular special introduction to the story, that the narrator is called Victor Reynolds. This Victor Reynolds had a very old friend, Roderick Usher. And for the long time they have not been at all meeting. Particular day, Victor Reynolds gets a letter from Roderick Usher that he demands his presence in his life. So without no further consideration, Victor tries to go to visit Roderick Usher. When what happens to Roderick, what is the present condition of his friend's life, and what is the tradition of his house, what really happens to him by the way of observation and narration, our Victor Reynolds presents a story before you. So the narrator, all of a sudden, goes to his friend's house and see what happens in his life. You may open page number 66, The Fall of the House of Usher. The story goes like that. During the whole of a dull, dark and soundless day in autumn of the year, when the clouds hung oppressively low in heavens, I had been passing alone. Underline, I had been passing alone. I was not accompanied by anybody, but I took a decision to visit Roderick Usher myself. Horseback through a singular dreary track of a country, I was galloping in the just like in a horseback Just like of the and length of the found myself, shade of evening drew within a few of melancholy house of Usher. Underline house of Usher. My destination of the journey to visit my friend Roderick Usher and his house. I know not how it was, but the first glimpse of building when I reached his house, my friend's house. For many of the days and months and years I have not met him. But presently, with his letter, which demands me my presence there, so I went to visit him. I know his house, glimpse of a building, sense of insufferable gloom pervaded my spirit. When I visited my friend's house, I saw it is a very, very, very old house. Insufferable, of feeling of unrelieved of any of the pleasurable, because of poetic sentiment with the mind usually receive and sternest nature image dissolute terrible. I looked upon the scene before me upon a mere house. It is only a simple house, and the simple landscape features the domain when the vacant of eye-like windows. It has 2-3 windows. Those windows are open like opening eyes of a gigantic figure. A depression, then to after dream of ravel upon him, and with an utter depression of soul, I can compare no earthly sensation more properly than to other dream of revel upon opium. And I saw my friend sitting inside the house. He was just like a drunkard, or just like has been using opium for a long time. Bitter lapse of everyday life. Through his bitter experiences of life, he had become so weak. The narrator says, hideous drooping over the veil. There was an incessant singing, sickening of the heart, undeemed dearness of thought which no goading imagination could torture. Sight of sublime. When was it I posed to think? What was it unraved me? Contemplation of house of Usher. I asked myself, is it my friend's house or some devil's house? The house is very bad in the sense that nobody can easily live inside. Such a bad house. I was forced to fall back upon an unsatisfied conclusion that beyond a doubt there are combinations of every simple natural obs that would power this affecting us. Still analyzes the power easily among the consideration beyond our. It was possible. I reflect that a mere different arrangement of particular scenes. Some things are arranged in the proper way inside the house. Some things are toppled down. Some tables are kept undesirable way. So I would wonder whether people live inside this house. Would sufficient to modify, perhaps annihilate the capacity of sorrowful impression acting upon this idea? I relied my host to perceive this brink of black and lurid turn, unruffled last by dwelling the gazed down with a shudder even more thrilling than before upon the rebelled inverted images of a sedge. Hastily dreams seem vacant and eye like windows. Anyway, I really thought nobody would live in such a house. The house was in such an old sense that nobody can live inside. Nevertheless, in this mansion of gloom, underline, it looks like a very big house, but it is a mansion of despair. It is a mansion of desperation. It is a mansion of sadness. It is a mansion of dejection. It is a mansion of disappointment. I now propose to myself sojourn, stay of some weeks. Then I thought, anyway, my friend invited me here, then I can stay here for some weeks. It's a proprietor means house owner. My friend, underline, Roderick Roderick Usher had been one of my boon companions, one of my soul companions. Roderick Usher is my friend, companion in beyond, but many years had been elapsed since our last meeting. Nowadays we have no connection at all. Nowadays we have not been meeting ourselves, but for last time, but somehow he sent me a letter how had reached me in distant part of the country, letter from him, which it was widely importunate nature, under importunate nature, begging nature, pleading nature, appealing nature, that my dear friend Victor Reynolds, please visit me. So once I got such a letter, without any hesitation, without any reluctance, I decided to visit him. Importunate nature had admitted no other personal reply. The manuscript has evidence of nervous agitation. I thought my friend Roderick Usher was having some problems. Then I decided to visit him. The writer spoke acute bodily illness, mental disorder which oppressed him, and of a desire to see me. Anyway, letter itself shows that my friend is suffering from illness. My friend needs my help. Then I decide to visit him. Indeed, of his personal friend, a view of attempting by the cheerfulness of society, some alleviations of malady diseases. Some diseases might have caught him. It was manner in which of these much more was said. It was apparent heart that went to recourse, which allowed me to no room for hesitation. I accordingly obeyed forthwith. I accordingly obeyed means, by reading the letter, I decided to visit him. I still considered very singular summons. Although all boys had been intimate associates, yet I really know little of my friend. Though we had been sole friends, I had no much idea about his family background. I have no idea about his parents, but he had been my friend. His reserve had always been excessive habitual. I was aware this was ancient family, had been noted time of mind, peculiar sensibility of temperament, displaying itself though old ages in many walks of exalted, manifested later, repeated deeds of munificent, kind, yet unobtrusive charity, not other kind, as a passionate devotion of intricates, perhaps even more than to the orthodox, easily recognizable beauties of musical science. Anyway, my friend had some quality of listening music. From the beginning of our friendship, I had come to know that he had a sense of music. Line of descent always traveling, I considered while running over the perfect keeping. Page number 68, the character of premises with the descended character of people, while speculating upon the possible influence which one long centric which had access upon the it was a deficiency of collateral issue, consequent and divining transmission from sire to son. What does it mean? What really happened to my friend, that I have no idea. But visiting his house, one thing I came to know, that he was the man only living in the house. He had some family issues. He had some family problems that to be dealt with. Probably his last wish to see me maybe prompted him to invite me here. Consequently, undeviating transition, which had length also identified to our marriage original title of estate in equivocal appellation house of Usher, appellation which seemed to include the minds of peasantry, used both the family and their family mansion. And their family tradition is that once he got a property, that after his life, though children have no other children, no other posterity, that he would maintain himself. In their family tradition, only one child is meant for in the life. I have the sole effect of my somewhat childish experiment. Looking down with elan had been deepened the first singular impression. There can be no doubt that conscious of rapid increase in superstition. Anyway, there is no meaning to study about his family background and family history, but I should in time of need, because friend in need is friend indeed. That is why I came here. And it might have been the reason only when I have uplifted my house itself from image of pool, the green mind strange fancy so ridiculous indeed, but I mentioned to show vivid force of sensation. I had so worked upon imagination as really to believe the immediate vicinity, almost all the house. Within a short time I observed, atmosphere had no affinity, which reeked from decayed trees. The house is decayed, so many trees and even orchard is there, totally decayed, and a pestilent music vapor. Shaking of my spirit, I must have been. I observed more narrowly the real aspect of the building. I was only the sole visitor to my friend's house. Then I observed and speculated all the parts of the house. Scanning, I did myself a scanning means observing all the areas. Its principal features seem to me excessive antiquity, underline antiquity, old stage, old position, old stage, antiquity, because the house is too old to live in. The desolation of ages, and yet all was put in extraordinary dilapidation. Almost some areas are at the brink of a decay, destruction, dilapidation, destruction. No portion of masonry had been fallen. There had been violent inconsistency between still perfection. Some masonry work now fell down. Crumbling condition of individual stones. In this way, there much remind of the spacious totality of old woodwork. The roof of the house is very old. Some roofs had been destroyed, neglected wall. They are staying to falling down with the distance with the extended air. Indication of fabric gave a little broken of instability. Perhaps I was scrutinizing observer. I myself observed all the areas of the house and might discovered barely perceptible fissure. There is a perceptible fissure in the way that somehow the house will fall down. Have discovered extending from roof of the building from which down the wall zigzag direction until it became lost in sullen waters. Noticing these things, I rode over a shorter causeway to his house. All of a sudden, I observed another person. Who is that? A servant, underline servant, page number 69. A servant waiting to my horse. A servant was waiting to take my horse to keep in another barn. I ended Gothic archway of the wall. A valet of the still step then concluded means silence, though many dark and intrusive passage in progress. Much that I encountered on the contributed. I know how to heighten the wake while the object around, while craving spoken. Somber tapestries as well as a bone darkness, which all the house and the presence of my friend, all the atmosphere of the house, gave me a phantasmagoric armorial trophy. Underlined. That is the technical usage by the narrator. It altogether gave me a phantasmagoric. Phantasmagoric means which creates the fear. It gave me an impression that some haunted creatures are here. Some devils living here in the house. I had been accustomed from my infancy. I still wanted to find how unfamiliar the fancy and ordinary images were. On the one staircase, when I was climbing up on the staircase to the upstairs, I met a doctor, physician, underline physician. Physician may be a person used to visit, to treat our Roderick Usher here, a trophy. Then I saw a physician. His countenance means his face, I thought were mingled expression of cunning perplexity. He accustomed to me trepidation past. He gave me a trepidation means what? A fear, sense of fear. The valet how now opened door ushered me to the presence of his master. The room in which I found myself was very large. When the servant directed me to the particular room, the room was very, very big, where my friend was living, in which I found myself. Large windows were long, narrow, pointed, vast distance, black, as told inaccessible. Feeble gleams of encrimsoned means made clear, made red light. The trellised pane, several sufficient distincts more prominent object, yet however struggled in vain. Dark draperies hung on the walls, draperies, curtains, dark color furniture was profuse, comfortless, antique, Latin, many books and musical instruments. So he used to read books, he used to listen music. Our Roderick was passionate, failed to give my vitality of the scene. I felt that I breathed an atmosphere of sorrow. Underline page number 70 also. I smelled means what? I got a sense that is something wrong somewhere, and my friend is very sorrowful person. An air of stern, deep, irredeemable gloom hung over, pervaded all. Altogether, the house, the hidden characters, those people who are silent characters, altogether the curtains, all the atmosphere of the house, which gave me an impression that my friend Roderick Usher has been suffering from lot of things. Then I should ask him to get him corrected, and what is my mission? I should ask him. Let us see what is going to happen in the next class. Thank you.